welcome to the next episode of Gallifrey Pirate Radio. We are actually coming at you from Carolinas, where we're actually getting a chance to interview some WHOVIANs, aka Doctor Who fans. And this time we have a very special Doctor Who fan with us today. But before we get there, I am your host, David Beauchamp. I am joined by
Drew Meyer.
And our special guest, our interviewee, AJ Hartley.
Nice to be here.
Yes. So let's just jump into the question. I mean, how did you first discover Doctor Who?
Well, I'm excuse me. I'm English, obviously. So I kind of grew up with it. I was thinking as I was driving in, what my first memories of seeing Doctor Who were live, and I'm gonna say it was Patrick Troughton.
Oh no, we're just
envious.
Yeah, very envious.
I may have seen the first Doctor, but I don't remember. And it's you know how memory plays tricks on you, and when you've seen things after the fact, you lose track of whether you actually saw them when they first aired. And I probably didn't, but I'm not sure. But I do remember seeing Troughton. But the Doctor that I really grew up, the two Doctors that I grew up with were John Pertwee and Tom Baker. And in those days, of course, in the UK, Doctor Who was very much a mainstream show. It wasn't a geek culture show. It wasn't a sort of fringe thing. But it was also a kids show. So people sort of naturally grew out of it. Or at least, and obviously in some ways it was richer and more complex than simply a kids show. But that was the sort of cultural association. So I remember Peter Davison, but I think at that point I had sort of transitioned out, and then I left the country for a while, and I never really saw Doctor Who again until the reboot.
Well, it just hit me. You're also we interview a lot of people on a show, especially fans. I think you're our first British fan of the show, and it's just really interesting to hear, because a lot of times when you interview Americans, their first exposure is normally PBS. Right. It's their first Doctor was Tom Baker, but it's just like when you said Troughton, I'm just like, wow, there's a chance you saw those episodes that have gone missing, that have gone lost. There's just, I mean, we've never get a chance to talk to somebody that that from that point of view. It's just amazing.
Now, and in real terms, of course, I don't remember much about it, because I was, what years were those airing?
Drew?
Oh, with Troughton?
Yeah.
66
through
68.
So I would have been pretty young. I mean, because I was only born in '64. So, yeah.
But wow, that's just amazing.
Did you watch with your parents? Did they actively participate?
Yeah. It was one of those, for some reason, Saturday evening was TV night.
That's interesting.
Where I grew up, and we would have. I'm from Lancashire. I'm from near Manchester, and we would have hot pot in front of the telly. It's the only night that we would eat in front of the TV. We religiously would be in the other room, have dinner every night around the table. But on Saturday night, we'd watch in front of the television, and we'd watch Doctor Who, and there'd be a few other shows that rotated in and out over the years.
Wow, that's just, wow.
Do you have siblings?
Just the one brother.
Older or younger?
Younger.
Younger, okay, so they would have watched.
Yeah. But I have a son, and it was strange now that and he's 10, and now that we're sort of watching the reboot, and I had this very surreal experience when he has convinced himself that Doctor Who's too scary to watch, and he's sort of fascinated by it, but he's sort of unnerved by it as well. And not that long ago, a year or so ago, we were watching an episode with him. He's okay when he's seen them before, when and he can go back and watch it again. That's not a problem, because we have them all on DVD.
Yeah.
But we were watching an episode that he'd never seen before, and he said, "I should tell you now, I'm going to hide behind the couch." I was like, oh my God, because the Doctor, I'm sure you know this, right? This was we all did that. I don't know why. I don't know why, but it was associated with this show, the hiding behind the couch thing.
Because watching a lot of the cool things about, I think, a lot of the DVD releases, the special features, the documentaries where they're talking to people that, you know, watched the show back in the day, writers, whatever, and that is the one common thread, is hiding behind the sofa.
Yes.
And just the fact that, you know, your kid is now hiding behind the sofa. I mean,
that's completely. I've never said that to him. There's no reason that he would make that association, but it's the same thing. The desire occasionally to sort of shut certain things out until you can process them.
I got a chance to watch with my 8-year-old godson fairly recently. Introduced him to Doctor Who. He had only seen The Curse of Fatal Death before. You know, his father's like, it's a comedy one. He knows some of the actors. So, you know, I had to go through this whole process of what episode you introduce him to that he'll find exciting but won't give him nightmares. And we went with The Lodger, which is a pretty easy to watch. It's a fairly safe episode.
Right.
Ducked down between his father and I, and like doing this, and you know, what I would not consider to be a tense or even scary moments.
Yeah.
But there's just something about it. Maybe it's because it is family programming, but it's so unlike any other kind of family programming. Or maybe it's just as an adult I'm desensitized to what is scary to a kid, you know.
Well, and obviously the reboot is different. It's in some ways I think it is a more adult show than it used to be, or at least it feels that way to me.
Well, the subject matter is certainly more adult, depending on how they.
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I did actually like when we had Sarah Jane Adventures. I mean, we had, you know, Sarah Jane was strictly really the kids show. Then you had Doctor Who, which was the family show. And then, of course, you had Torchwood, which was definitely the more adult show. And it was really sad when Liz died because you lost that. But also it gave the BBC a chance to embrace the K9 TV show that was only filmed in Australia, which was actually a pretty decent show. I sat down and watched it, and because it did get good ratings and stuff like that, and because we did lose the Sarah Jane Adventures, I know they're picking up a second season of the K9 show, which to fill that gap, because I think that's important to have, you know, in the realm of Doctor Who, that strictly kids show, and then, you know, you have the family version, you know, and I could, you know, give or take the adult version with Torchwood, but I mean, it is a, you know, family kid show, and it's amazing that it's lasted 50 years.
And I think the show always had, you know, under the playfulness and the family-friendly stuff, there were always some, you know, fairly dark things in play. You know, I find myself thinking about, you know, the Daleks a lot, because they were always, of course, my favorite as a kid, but there was, and they're not viscerally scary in the way that, you know, furry or slimy monsters are, you know. But, of course, in the late 60s, in the UK, you know, the Second World War still loomed very large, and the Daleks are Nazis.
Oh yeah.
In tanks, right? Yeah. You know, and I think that maybe people, particularly in England, still heard that or saw that more than they would in the States at the time. I don't know.
Well, one thing I think with the Cybermen, I think they're one of the more fascinating ones because we've seen an evolution.
Yeah.
You know, they've gone from people that look like burn victims, you know, in those outfits to, you know, full on robots, even past what the Daleks were. Yeah. And I just. And that's one thing that's just, it's wonderful to see this evolution. And I mean, if you're talking about scary things, I mean, these were people that were human, and like in some episodes, you can still see the moving the human parts until they go fully like mechanic. And then that's just a really scary thought, you know, cutting all humanity out of yourselves to be this robotic automaton. I mean, that's just a really scary thought. Giving yourself fully into the machine, which is, you know, some of the stuff that's going on nowadays, you know, where do you cross the line with, you know, technology? You know, Google Glasses, plugging yourself directly into the internet, things like that.
And the show's always been good at sort of finding a kind of clever, visceral kind of way of dealing with the aliens and the monsters. And the, you know, I mean, one of my favorites from the recent shows, of course, is the Weeping Angels. You know.
Actually, you being from England, did you ever watch Blue Peter at all?
Yeah.
Because Blue Peter and Doctor Who have such a intertwined sort of history, which I never realized being an American. We didn't get Blue Peter. We didn't get to see a lot of that stuff until the DVDs where they actually take those snippets of Blue Peter from Doctor Who and show it to us, because I never knew. So what was Blue Peter like?
Blue. That's a really. It was a sort of. I don't know what you'd call it. A children's variety show almost. It was a sort of a mixture of kind of news coverage sort of stuff and more playful stuff. They would have kid guests on there, and they would do sort of quiz type shows. It was a sort of an odd sort of grab bag of a lot of different stuff, and they would always be, I think, like 3 hosts.
Yeah.
And they all had slightly different personalities, and were each responsible. And one of them was the sort of the guy who would do all the sort of goofy, not daredevil-y stuff, but sort of stunt type things, and but yeah, I mean, again, that's not. I mean, we used to watch it religiously, but I haven't seen it for 30 years.
Yeah, it's like, that was the weird thing. Is I never knew that there was this thing called Blue Peter, and it was on one of the DVDs. They're like, this is how you build, your own little theater, so you can do your own little Doctor Who plays, and you could go to like one of the magazines or program books that were just coming out to get like the cutout stuff. I mean, it's just really, really fascinating, just the culture of Doctor Who that was over there, because like even with all the merchandising, we've never seen that level of merchandising here over in the States, because you're dealing with the imports and duties and taxes and stuff like that. So I mean, it's just, I won't lie, it would be just fascinating to, and I've gone over to England a few times, and of course that was before, it was sort of during the break for Doctor Who. I haven't been back since, but it's just like at Easter, dialect candies that you get at Easter. It's just, I couldn't imagine, but I guess it's kind of like superheroes over here, where like have your Nestle Crunch bars with like Superman, because I remember seeing some candy ads with the doctors. I mean, it'd just be fascinating.
I remember we had, I can't remember what, there was a breakfast cereal that you got Doctor Who characters.
Wow.
In the cereal. And they were just like, I think they were just like cardboard cutout kind of things, but you collected them. And we must have had like, there must have been 50 each different Doctor Who monster kind of thing.
Awesome.
And what's really strange is, again, because I was out of the UK and a lot of this stuff I kind of forgot. But I'm a writer, and I one of the first sort of major creative things that I ever did was when I was a kid. Me and my brother used to play these sort of imaginary world games, right, as brothers do. And they would take different forms, war games and fantasy things of various kinds. And we always had for our country, and there was always the enemy. I had made up the enemy, I thought. And it was only when I was watching the reboot, and I was looking, and I had some old of these little maps that I'd made as a kid, and we're fighting again, and who were we fighting against? We're fighting against the Sontarans.
That's awesome.
And I had no recollection of the Sontarans as a Doctor Who monster. I thought I'd invented them, and then I remembered the little cardboard Sontaran guy that I got from the breakfast cereal.
So you didn't catch the episodes, you just caught.
I don't know if I suspect not. I suspect we missed the episodes, but somehow we had the character, and that sort of informed our.
Because that was 74. I mean, they weren't introduced till 1974.
Is that right?
Yeah. Was that also the first?
Oh no, I'm sorry. It wasn't 74. It was 73 for Sarah Jane the Time Warrior.
Yeah. See, and I think that's just an amazing thing. It's like, I grew up with Doctor Who, but I grew up with Doctor Who from this perspective of what we got on PBS, and not that full culture. But I mean, at least I had a really awesome mom that actually knitted me a 30-foot scarf, a foot across. So I mean, I had my baker scarf.
Right.
And it's just, I could not imagine. But I mean, I guess
did they repeat them on PBS?
Yeah,
That's a phenomenon that we never had in the UK. The episode would air once, and then it was gone.
Really?
Yeah, there's no syndication. We had 3 channels. So there was, the only thing you would ever see repeated were movies.
Yeah, because the way it worked over here with PBS is they would buy blocks of episodes, and that's the same way they would also sell them overseas. You'd buy these blocks, and of course Baker was the most popular one because it was color. He was goofy, and he's just the one that they all gravitated to. And then because he did so well. They picked up the Davisons, and they went back and got some of the Pertweeds, because they would sell them in blocks, and that's what would air, and that's because it was PBS. They just every Saturday about noon they would actually show. And they would actually splice them together where you get a 2-hour episode of Doctor Who, and then after that you would get like Blake 7 or The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and stuff like that. Because when I actually watched my first Doctor Who DVD, I had no idea they had been broken down, that they originally aired in like 20-minute, half an hour episodes. It blew my mind. I didn't realize there was a part 1, part 2, part 3, because I grew up with as one solid chunk of a show, on this episode.
Yeah, and I had almost forgotten that as well. And I was thinking about it more recently. That I remember that sort of those cliffhanger endings, and it's brilliant storytelling, in terms of making you want more. Of course, if you're reading a book, what it is it makes you read the next chapter.
Exactly.
It's the Da Vinci Code before the Da Vinci Code, right? But of course we had to wait a week.
And the thing is back then there was no internet. I mean, a cliffhanger was a real cliffhanger. You did not know what was coming next. And I mean, I couldn't imagine that. I mean, I think the closest thing we had a taste to it, at least for me, was when the new Doctor Who was coming out. I knew about that from the internet, but people really weren't posting spoilers, things like that, because it was only a very select few that were getting their hands on these episodes. So I didn't get that stuff spoiled for me, but now I actively stay away from the internet so I don't have stuff spoiled. And we got really lucky with the Name of the Doctor, because BBC America actually shipped out, I don't know how many copies. 210 copies of the 7B Blu-ray, and everybody begged and pleaded with the people that got it, don't spoil that episode. And have you had a chance to see that episode, The Name of the Doctor?
Yes. Yeah.
What did you think of it? Because you come from both a classic and a new Who thing, and I mean this is sort of, I think, a happy marriage in some sort of ways to sort of start kicking off the 50 years of the show.
Yeah. No, I actually liked it, and I mean for me it was the sort of the high point of the season, which as you know I have been not terribly happy with. And it's one of those seasons to me where it felt like this was the rationale for the entire season. And it's part of the reason why, to me, most of the other episodes felt thin. That in the end everything was pointing towards this one moment, and so this one moment worked really well. The rest of it I didn't think had as much substance as. And to be honest, I felt this a number of times with Moffat's writing, and it was really strange. I think it was during the airing of that episode when they were showing a little snippet of him being interviewed and talking about his process. And at one point he was saying, sometimes the episodes are just an idea, just a phrase. Dinosaurs on a spaceship. And I was watching it with my wife, and we're like, that's the problem. That was the problem. It's like, but I remember watching that episode, and it's like, that's all there is in this episode. Dinosaurs on a spaceship.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I love that episode. I think it's a valid thing. Series 7 has had many low points, has had many high points, but unfortunately, I don't think there's a balance there this time around. I won't lie, I loved Cold War. Was that the name of it? Where they brought back the Ice Warriors. I mean, I've been waiting for a long time. The Trout and Error monster that I absolutely adored, with the great Lego hands and stuff like that. And it was just nice to bring them back. I thought that was a high point, but I mean, there were, I think, much more low points. And
when are we bringing back the Sea Devils? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, that's.
I think with the popularity of Madame Vastra, if Moffat stays on, now that Matt Smith is leaving, if Moffat stays on, we're going to get more of the Paternoster gang, right? So who knows? That would be cool.
Because honestly, I do know that when they first brought back the Silurians, they did 2 makeup jobs. They did the new modern, or this new look for them, but they had also recrafted the original head. So I would love to see a scene where you have, the classic ones, the Sea Devils, the new ones, and just like this. Just this cavalcade of these reptilian races that exist. I mean, I think it would be a beautiful scene. Just bridging the gap. Because I mean, I'm finally happy that we're getting Zygons. I've always loved the Zygons. I think they're great classic Who monster, and we're getting them back in November.
My favorite episode as a kid, and I know, and maybe I'm wrong about the repeating thing, because I know I saw this a few times. That would be, I don't know, long after the fact. Do you remember the Agador of Peladon?
Yeah.
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 With the only
Well, they had two Peladon episodes. It could be that you remember there's Curse and the Monster of Peladon. So there were two episodes.
There were two?
So and they would show omnibus versions occasionally on repeats.
Oh well, then maybe
yeah.
maybe that's what I saw. And that was the John Pertwee episode, right?
Both of those, yeah.
Yeah, and when he hypnotizes it with
By
the
singing
watch
and singing.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was a kid, we had a record of John Pertwee singing like children's songs.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
And I remember that. I mean, talk about uber geek. I also had a single of the Doctor Who theme. Which
Who here in this room does not have, in some form or fashion, the theme somewhere?
I mean, but I mean, somewhere it must still be at home. I have a 45 single.
That's
Cool.
that's awesome. Because I remember, because luckily enough, I did live in Chicago when I was a kid. And I had access to like Moondog Comics, which was a big comic place. And just being in Chicago, you get lots of things. I mean, I had a number of the Who LPs. The sound effects, the music and stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, because back then, I mean, that's what we had.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the Target
BBC
novels.
Radiophonic Workshop.
Yeah.
I had one.
Yeah.
Which is now back.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and like the Target novelizations, which for a while were the your reruns of the episodes.
Mm.
That's what you had. So, do you have a favorite Doctor? And you can break it down to classic and New Who, or you can just combine the two. I'm just kind of really curious because you come at it from a whole other perspective than any of us.
It took him a while to win me over, but I think my favorite Doctor is Tennant. I think that, and it's a temperament thing. I think that what he accessed, and a lot of it is about the writing, but it's also about the writing for what he was, for his strengths.
Yeah.
And I think that it was the first time for me that the sort of the loneliness, the sense of what it really means to be a Time Lord, which is really to watch everybody around you die, started to sort of register on a deep character level. And the fact that sort of played out in romantic terms, I thought was interesting because we hadn't really seen that before, or I hadn't. And it was moving towards, when he dies, it was also, for me at least, the first time that I really remember thinking that the regeneration wasn't simply a way of escaping the problems of having to bring in new actors,
Mm-hmm.
that there were sort of serious emotional consequences of that he really is dying, that a version of himself is going away and he knows he's losing it. And that I thought was great. The other thing that made me really like the Tennant stuff, really, if I was honest, is that I love Catherine Tate's Donna Noble. And she was such a wonderful foil for him that it allowed him to sort of to different aspects of who he was were able to come through because he had this really sort of adversarial, tough, non-romantic companion, and I loved that. I thought she was wonderful, and the way that they sort of finally took her out of it and what happens to her is among sort of the most emotive stuff in the show for me, and it's fascinating to sort of suggest, that there's something worse than dying.
Yeah.
And it's losing that sense of who you were.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw Donna Noble in The Runaway Bride, I could not stand her. There was just something I didn't like about the character. But then when she came back for that season and just Partners in Crime, I mean, instantly won me over. And a lot of people I talked to said that, like, you know, if they liked her in Runaway Bride, they didn't like her characterization in the season, and vice versa. But I just went back and rewatched Runaway Bride, and it works so much better once you know her whole story. You see. I mean, she has a complete story arc. You get to see her, you know, at the beginning all the way through to the end, and it's just a wonderful story. And to me, in a lot of ways, and you know, some people, you know, cringe when I say this, I think in a lot of ways she's like a modern version of Sarah Jane.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Sarah Jane really, I mean, especially when she first came on, she thought the Doctor was the villain. She thought she was the bad guy.
Right.
Thought he was the bad guy, and it's just, I really saw her by the end of it like a modern day Sarah Jane.
Yeah. I thought she's just terrific. And the Ood, Planet of the Ood episodes, and then and South of the Library, and the sort of the final, you know, what's it called, the Stolen Earth.
Stolen Earth.
The Dalek episode where they sort of fuse and yeah, just great. And I love the fact that she had a real sort of social infrastructure around her. I love that we got to see a little more of her family life. The grandfather character, Bernard Cribbins, I think is terrific. And of course he was in the original.
Yeah, the original movies.
But yeah, and just wonderful. Love that stuff.
So this is a question I have to ask. BBC right now is doing these actually kid-friendly Doctor Who books leading up to the anniversary. They're only e-books, and I keep waiting to see, you know, your name pop up. I mean, I'm like, because they are only going with British authors and stuff like that, and each time they announce one, I'm just like, is AJ going to be in there? I'm just.
I would love that, but I suspect that's a very hard gig to get.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking with Aaron and Tim Zahn on that panel about writing in other people's universes, and both of them, and they've done Star Wars and Star Trek and Eureka and all kinds of stuff. And when I asked them, I said, you know, whose sandbox would you most like to play in? And they both said the same two: Firefly, Doctor Who, which is. That's where I would like to, you know, if I was to write in somebody else's world, those are the two worlds I would most like to play with.
I'll admit, I had a shot at when they were bringing a lot of Americans in to do some of the anthologies. I was given the contact information, everything to do it. The theme, I don't think the anthology ever came out because it was during that cusp where Doctor Who was starting to hit it big again, and they were like pulling lots of the licensing that were getting ready to expire. So I don't think this anthology ever happened, but it was a anthology that was taking like the Grimm's fairy tales and stuff like that and merging with Doctor Who, and I was just like, I want to write something for it. I want to pitch something for it, but at that time, I felt too fanboyish. It would have been I don't think I could have done the story justice because they were even telling me, you know, these are the doctors you want to avoid. You know, these are the doctors you want to use for the best chance to get in. I mean, they were basically telling me sort of, you know, who to use, what to use in order to get a fair shake at getting into the anthology. But I knew at that point I was not strong enough as a writer to pull something like that off. I just took myself out of it. But I mean, I can say that is the closest I've come to actually having a chance at writing in that universe.
It's really funny that you should say that because I have never seriously thought about actively trying to pursue something like that until this weekend and talking to these other guys and talking to you, and it is. I would actually love to do it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, I would. Yeah, if I was given the offer now, I definitely think I could pull it off, especially after, you know, getting some of my fanboyishness out of me when I had a chance to meet Peter Davison, and that was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I saw your interview.
Yeah, and I mean, he was just such a wonderful individual. I mean, he put up with so much.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. I mean, that first interview we did, I lost it because that was my moment. It was. To me, it was time crash all over again when Tennant gives that lovely speech to Davison about how he was his doctor. I mean, that was my moment where I just flustered and flumbled and just. But you know, then when I did the other interviews with him, it was such a much more wonderful experience because we sort of got that out of the way, and I think he also realized just how much fun.
Yeah.
And I'm not like this crazy fanboy thing, but yeah, he was just a wonderful actor.
It's funny. I think I had forgotten this, but I think one of the issues, and some of it was just my own age, and maybe I was sort of growing out of Doctor Who just as he came in. The other thing was that I already had very strong associations with him as an actor, because I'd been a big fan of All Creatures Great and Small.
Yeah.
And he was Tristram.
Yeah, he was Tristan. He was the main character in that show.
And I loved him on that show. I thought he was terrific. But it made it harder for me to make the transition, right? Because we bring, baggage associated with particular actors. I'm probably one of the few people who had specific associations with Christopher Eccleston, because I'm a Shakespeare professor, and he did a movie of the Revenge's Tragedy, which is wonderful, directed by Alex Cox, which is a play I've directed. Wow.
No, just my face. Yeah, I like Alex Cox quite a bit.
Yeah, have you seen the movie?
I haven't.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
All right.
And he gets to really sort of play his Liverpool roots.
Well, I loved Eccleston doing the John Lennon documentary.
Yeah, I did too.
And that was, I learned a lot that I didn't realize about Lennon in that, but he was wonderful in that.
I should have worn. I have a Doctor Who shirt. Of course, I have a Doctor Who shirt.
Yeah.
But I had it customized.
Oh, really?
Yes. Rather, my wife had it customized for me, and across the back it says, "Lots of planets have a north."
Nice. That's awesome. See, you're just as nerdy at this stuff as we are.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we all
maybe
have
even more so.
Yeah. It's like we all have our strengths. I come in from one angle. You definitely, you grew up with it more so than we did. You got to see some of it as it originally aired, where us, we got it in PBS reruns,
right.
And then Drew is just the master of classic knowledge. He just reads so much of the history and stuff.
Yeah, but I watched it as a kid, very intermittently. I never saw a complete episode of Doctor Who as a child. I saw an episode or two on a Saturday night, maybe once every 4 or 5 months. I just read the comics and I read the books and stuff.
Yeah, and like for me, I grew up with it. I can't tell you who my first Doctor was or anything like that. I've always known Doctor Who.
Yeah.
A lot of people could, say, this is my first Doctor, and that's why he's my favorite. Sometimes I could say, this might be the first Dalek episode I saw, this might be the first Cyberman episode I ever saw, but beyond that, it's a blur, like you said,
Yeah.
And with like PBS, we did get the reruns, so, and by no means did they show anything in order on PBS.
No, I bet.
So it was really a hodgepodge
Yeah.
of that sort of thing.
You know what I'm doing now? This is real. I can't believe I'm going to tell you this. I'm currently building a steampunk Dalek
That's awesome.
cocktail cabinet.
That is awesome.
And there's a freezer in the bottom for glasses and stuff, and you open the whole thing up, and the bottles and what have you. And it's all in wood and copper and brass.
You got to send pictures.
Yeah,
I want to
if
see
ever
pictures.
Finish the damn thing, yeah.
I think that speaks not so much to your fandom as to the tolerance and fandom of your family who would allow you to have something like that in the home.
Well, my wife is a fan as well, so
That's.
Yeah.
No, I'm curious. Is your wife American,
Yeah.
British? Okay.
She's from Chicago, actually.
Oh, actually, cool. That's actually where I grew up. That's where
She's
I'm
from
from.
Evanston.
Okay, I'm Naperville, Palestine, that sort of area. So wow. So do you have any upcoming projects, books that you'd like to talk about Pimp and discuss?
The third, I write a middle grades fantasy adventure series. The lead character is called Darwin Arkwright, and the third book in that series, Darwin Arkwright and the School of Shadows, comes out in August.
Cool.
And then the next thing that I'll have coming out is the novel of Hamlet.
Yeah, I see your updates on that.
Yeah, because I did a version of Macbeth. We wrote first as an audio book, which was performed by Alan Cumming, and we're doing the Hamlet, and I know that they're talking about David Tennant to do it.
Speaking as you're Shakespeare, you're a Who fan. this is sound horrible. I can't remember if he did the Hamlet or the Macbeth.
Yeah.
Tenet, like he did.
Hamlet.
He did Hamlet.
Yeah, I have yet to have a chance to see it. I mean, I'm dying to see it. How was it?
It was terrific, I mean, there's a movie version, a film version
Yeah.
that's done for, but I saw it on stage at the RSC and actually got to meet him and Patrick Stewart and talk to them a little about it.
Wow.
I'd met Patrick Stewart before. In fact, it seems to me that one of the first times that we really met
Yeah.
was at High Point maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I actually did a formal paper on the intersections of Tennant's Doctor Who and his Hamlet.
Really, I would love. I totally missed that because I was probably running around doing something.
Yeah.
Because that'd be something fascinating to read.
It was an extraordinary thing because I saw the show in Stratford during the World Shakespeare International Shakespeare Conference. So it was a bizarre experience because there were like 200 Shakespeareans in the audience. And the rest of the audience was mainly teenage girls. And it was absolutely...
There for Tenet?
Yeah. And it was sort of an extraordinary thing because it was one of the most exciting Hamlets I'd ever seen. And it was partly because of the level of energy and excitement about him. And this, of course, was at the height of... I want to say season 4 or say I think so.
Yeah,
So
it was right
he
about
was
yeah.
still, and so there was a huge excitement about.
Because I think it was right before they aired the specials.
Yeah.
Those individual specials is one that hit. Because I mean, I actually went to Target. They actually had a copy of the DVD of the Hamlet. I don't think I had my wallet or something. There was something that prevented me from picking it up. Because I mean, they had it. They're extremely cheap. I was like, yes, I must have this to watch. But it was like something stopped me. Because I've heard nothing but amazing things about that rendition.
Well, you'll see a lot of Doctor Who in it.
Oh, it doesn't surprise me.
So I did a paper. I published a paper on it actually called "Time Lord of Infinite Space."
Wow, I might have to jump on NC Live to see if I could find a copy of it.
But yeah, it was really fascinating to me to see the way that the two versions of the character sort of coexisted within the body of the actor, which is something that always fascinates me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it just, wow, we just went to Shakespeare. I mean, you just brought the intellectual level of our show up to here.
Well, part of what the paper was about also, of course, was about the Shakespeare Code, the episode, and reading that through the Hamlet, the way that these...
What did you think? I mean, being a Shakespeare guy, what did you actually think about that episode?
I liked it very much, and I was at the Shakespeare Association 2 years ago, where I remember Peter Holland, who is, one of, if not the premier Shakespeare critics in the world, showed a chunk from that episode during one of his lectures. And we were talking about it afterwards because he knew I'd written about it, and he's a friend of mine anyway. And he said, that in some ways he thought one of the best representations of Shakespeare the man that he had ever seen in any form.
Wow, who wrote that? Do you know who wrote that episode?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay, because I mean, usually, it wasn't Gatiss, was it, or anybody like that, or was it somebody different?
No, I know at one point in time I knew, but it is Sunday, and at the end of a con, so my brain is the fact that I'm
I love that.
sleeping in this bed right now is speaking.
But I really liked that episode, and again the sort of intertextuality, the way that it sort of wove together. Obviously the Macbeth story, also Hamlet, also Tempest with the Sycorax, and various other things. It was a very clever episode. I thought it worked really well.
Love's Labour's One.
Love's Labour's One, which I've written a book about. So yeah, that all that is in play as well. And also sort of very self-consciously connecting to Harry Potter and Expelliarmus. It's wonderful. It's great. It's sort of a monument to British popular culture. That's what that episode is, and that's what Shakespeare is.
That's what Doctor Who is.
Wow, I mean, I actually
Yes.
never really ever thought about that, but yeah, Shakespeare was, pop culture.
Absolutely.
Wow. I feel like I'm getting educated on this episode. No, I mean, I honestly, and that's one of the reasons why I like doing these sort of, fan interviews, because you just never know, what connections, what you're going to learn, and I mean, this is just, wow, I think this is probably one of my favorite interviews that we've done one-on-one with somebody, because it's just been, because you're drawing from all these different places and just bringing it all together in a very fascinating way.
Have you read the Russell Davies book, it's called A Writer's Tale?
Not yet. I want to, because they updated it.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I just got that version, and I'm about a quarter of the way through, and it's really sort of fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it's while he was writing season 4, I guess.
Yeah, I'm really curious about, because thanks to Drew, I'm really getting into some of the history and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and also thanks to the DVDs with those documentaries, because they just released a new one on John Nathan Turner that I want to read, and I want to read the one that Davies did, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Moffat might come out with and get his experiences.
Well, that didn't even occur to me until now. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's a really monumental task to take this living organism that's been around 50 years and be put in charge of it,
Yep.
and to help carry that torch. I mean, I think it's just, as much as I would love to have that job, I would be horrified to have that job at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, the one thing that I wish the Davis book did more was talking about the original, and maybe it does later in the book, I don't know. But I would love to see, to really hear the inside story about how the reboot came about, because there must have been tremendous pressure against it. There must have been, I mean, I remember my own response when it said, oh yeah, we're rebooting Doctor Who, and I was like, no, that's not going to work. This is a terrible idea.
Yeah, the only one real thing I know about the whole thing with the reboot, one thing Davies really, really wanted to do, and I got this off one of the DVDs, I can't remember which one, or it might have been a confidential. Davies really wanted, because the Doctor Who comic was the thing that was one of the few things that kept the torch going, he really wanted to let the comic have that regeneration scene from Magan to Eccleston, but because there was they didn't want people to see before it happened, they didn't want people to see after it happened, there was no way to line it up where everything would come out at the same time. It was an idea that they scrapped, but I thought that was kind of really cool of Davies to be like, this is something that was an institution that kept it in the hearts and minds of people. I want to give them something special, but it was just one of those little things that never were able to work out. Yeah, and it would be fascinating to see the story, because I mean, I think right now for the BBC, Doctor Who is their number one moneymaker. It may not be their number one moneymaker in England right now, but worldwide, it is making them a fortune with selling the rights. I mean, they just started selling the rights to other countries that never had it because of the popularity of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to say? Because I mean, we have really gone on this one. I think this has been a very fascinating and just exploration of Doctor Who from a different perspective.
Yeah, I'm sure other things will occur to me afterwards, and I'll email you and say, we should have talked about that.
Oh, don't worry. Honestly, it's great that we do cross paths as much as we do, because you're one of the ones I would love, as the show continues and those memories resurface. Because I really think, because one of the quotes and I can't find the press release on this one, they said, the 50th anniversary has only just started, which gets me just that much more excited about what we might see. Because I'm looking forward to Adventures in Space and Time, which is the what's it called? I know it's not docudrama, but it's just where they're going to explore that history. But yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna get you in the nice cozy chair again to talk again, because it's just, and especially after I read some of the stuff you wrote, especially because I'm gonna hunt that stuff down, because I would really love to read it and that comparison and just poke and pick at your brain about that sort of thing.
Yeah, I had hoped this year. There's an African-English actress called Nomada Mazwani, who she plays the captain of unit.
Oh yes.
Like in the episode where the bus goes into the desert on the other side, right? She's the person in charge. And she shows up in a couple of episodes.
She does, yeah.
And she's an RSC actress, and and I had been talking to her for a while about getting her to come to UNCC to talk about doing Shakespeare, particularly as a black actor in the UK. And I met with her pretty much this time last year in New York. We couldn't figure out the scheduling and such, and so I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it was cool. We were in the bar, and we were just sort of chatting and talking about Shakespeare stuff, and somebody came over and said, "Best captain of unit ever." And she's like,
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, if she comes, definitely let us know, because
Yeah.
I mean, like, Charlotte's only literally a hop and skip and a jump away from where I'm at,
Right.
and I'd just love to see any of those people talk. I was really upset that I didn't realize that a lot of the word was here a couple months ago. God, I feel so bad. I can't remember who she's married to.
Dawkins.
Yeah, because he was doing lectures at was it Charlotte or not Charlotte? Was it Chapel Hill? I think.
Chapel Hill or Raleigh was
Yeah.
the atheist convention.
And I mean, she was just there, and I mean, I would have loved to. If I would have known, I would have hopped in the car because it's not that far, and brought something and just, will you please sign this?
Yeah.
Because I've really enjoyed. I enjoyed her time on the show, and then also all the stuff she does with the Big Finish audios, which have just been absolutely phenomenal. But we are going to wrap this up because we have gone on long enough talking
And
about
they're going
Doctor
to kick
Who.
us out of this hotel room in a few minutes.
Yes,
Oh,
they
that's
will.
right.
They will. But yes, thank you so much, AJ,
Thank you.
for
Thank
coming
you.
out to the
It was
show.
fun.
And I'm definitely going to bring you back because just fascinating talking to you about this, because you are honestly our first British person that actually grew up with the show as it aired, and just were there in the culture of Doctor Who in England at the time, which.
I have diaries. I should go back. and see if I have stuff.
And like my eyes like bling. Really?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah.
I used to keep a diary when I was a kid, and I'll bet there's Doctor Who stuff.
You and I need to talk after this. I have a project I'd like to talk to you about.
So this is Gallifrey Pirate Radio signing off until next time. Peace.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be making a drink in the background. I might use the bathroom. It's just like, actually, that would be pretty awesome to just hear the toilet flush. I come in. So, AJ,
And the rest of us
we're gonna tie your hands to the chair. We let you like sweat for a few seconds when we come back in. You hear things sharpening. We should check the drawers too. We didn't put anything in the drawers, did we?
I mean, at least it's not. We weren't filming last night when we had the whore master or
Oh,
the
no.
whore monster next
Or
door.
was it just like man whore?
Yes, the man
Man
whore.
whore. 3 o'clock in the morning, all you hear is, "Ladies and gentlemen, I present the return of the man whore!" And everyone's like, "Man whore!" And, like, and we all just ducked under our covers a little bit.
Yeah.
A little
Yeah.
bit more.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I won't be spending the night anymore on the party floor. I normally don't mind it, but when you have a party there and a party there,
Yeah.
it gets really loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thumpy, mysterious thumps.
Yes.
You hear a scream and then everything goes quiet. And then the party started back up again, and you're just kind of like,
And this is going to be at the outtakes at the end of the credits.
okay. Oh, you're filming now. Okay.
Oh yeah. I hope I'm
Oh, that's
filming.
good to know.
I'm horribly bad about not hitting that record button. And I did hit it. Awesome. We got some good stuff there for the B-roll. Okay, so you guys ready?
Sure.
Okay.